Yeah, so thanks to Joshua and Heather for making the time to come and join us. Maybe Alicia, if anyone else joins in, you can let them in, and we'll make the recording available as well to anyone who wasn't able to make it live today. Just a little bit about the kind of what we wanted to cover today. So Alicia's going to kick us off and just talk for a few minutes about being an impact customer and the benefits that come with that. I'm then going to talk for the bulk of the session to kind of run through some of the kind of complementary support services that are now available to you, and also kind of look at some of your new content, particularly sex and sexuality and Colonial Caribbean, and that's probably going to take the bulk of the session, just looking at some of that exciting primary source content. And then Katie's going to talk for the last 10 minutes or so before questions about Quartex. So do you want to take over, Alicia?
Sure. Thank you, Laura. So Laura mentioned that by gaining access to all of the Adam Matthew portfolio, you actually are now what we call here at Adam Matthew an impact customer, which means that you have access to everything, but also you have access to all of the very complementary services that we've always offered to libraries. But the additional level of benefit is that there is definitely a level of customization that's available for you there as well. So we're really excited that you were able to join this elite group of libraries that do have access to absolutely everything. And we just wanted to review some of the benefits that are available to you so that you're aware of them. Now, these benefits are actually listed in your contract and your license agreement with us, but not everyone, takes a look or reads through the license agreement in full. And so we will send over as a follow-up to our meeting today, just a copy of exactly what it is that you have access to as far as some of the top level benefits. But it does include access to all of our well-known content, which again, Laura will take some time to highlight, as well as our services. And then in addition to that, it also gives you access to our Quartex technology, and Katie will spend some time talking about that. But at the very highest level, Adam Matthew is the largest Quartex customer. Quartex is our technology platform that allows us to expose our collections and create the high level of access that Adam Matthew is well known for, but it also is now available for the library to use as well for your own collections or own project-based needs. So again, Katie will talk about that a little bit later on in the presentation. If you want to flip, okay. And so again, this is a copy of the document that we'll send over to you as a follow-up to our meeting today. But just at the really high level, I've circled a few that are really popular and are meant to be helpful to you. So the first is you are entitled to all of the data mining rights for any Adam Matthew product that you do own. So that means that you can have access to all of the raw data that runs behind our collections, including the OCR files, upcoming our HTRT files, which Laura and Katie will talk about, and then also the metadata that runs behind the collections as well. And Laura's team can help facilitate that process. And this is one of the most common things we get asked about now, so that's why I like to highlight it. You're also entitled to free alumni access. Oh, I'm sorry, Laura, if you could go back for just a second. Free alumni access. So again, each institution sets up alumni access a little bit differently. We are happy to facilitate that process, but whenever you are ready or would like to set that up, we are more than happy to help. And then finally, we have developed a digital toolkit, especially as many of us are still working in a virtual environment. The digital toolkit is meant to help with pushing out information about your new collections through your social media channels. So you're welcome to use that at any time. And then one more slide, and then I'll turn it back to Laura. Again, the other thing I wanted to mention is that in addition to our having access to the content and our complementary services, you also are entitled to benefit from our Quartex platform. And so actually, Katie's going to talk you through some of the samples that we ran for your library using our handwritten text recognition transcription service and how those results turned out. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. And then finally, you are entitled to, when you own the whole portfolio, moving forward, you are entitled to a 50% discount off of the entire front list package from Adam Matthew moving forward. So we typically publish between 5 and 10 titles every single year. And so thinking of that title as like a package of resources, you would automatically start out with a 50% discount, whereas previously you would typically get like maybe a 20 to 30% discount off for packages of content. So that's just a nice another benefit for you to keep in mind. So that kind of covers it at the high level. I'll turn it back over to you, Laura.
Great, thanks, Alicia. So I was just going to kind of tie in with what Alicia was saying there and explain a little bit how my role fits into that. So a lot of the impact customer benefits circle around complementary support services that are available to you, and I'm the kind of the dedicated outreach person that you can contact for any needs at any time. And there's some of the different services and complementary support listed on this slide here, some of which Alicia mentioned already. But what I wanted to kind of mention as a different example was course alignment. And this is kind of something that really ties in with our product specialist aspect of the outreach team's role as well. So one of the other impact customers we worked with requested a guide to audiovisual sources, which we then created for them. And you can see the front cover there. And the kinds of things that was included in that guide was a list of every single collection that had audiovisual sources. It included a little paragraph explaining the nature of the audiovisual content, as well as information about what kind of AV type was included and what source archive they came from. So that was something that we provided for another impact customer. There's also a kind of course alignment that we did for a faculty member, NYU, who is also one of our impact customers. There was a faculty member there running a course called the Cultures and Contexts, the Black Atlantic, and she sent her syllabus to me and her reading list and broke down the weekly teaching week by week. And what I created was this list. So this is 1 week's teaching. As an example, there was 1 week that covered the Navigating the New Century, and the topic was ethnographic display and anti-colonial movements readings. And this is the kind of primary sources that I pulled out from the collections she had accessible at NYU, that she then incorporated in her syllabus to suggest to the students for additional reading. And then before I jump into kind of a little bit detail looking at 2 different collections as an example, I also wanted to show you AM Explorer, which you have access to as an impact customer, which allows you to search through all of your collections. So AM Explorer is basically a platform that provides a single point of access with built-in federated search functionality across the entire Adam Matthew digital portfolio. And the collections in AM Explorer span about 800 years of history, and they contain a multitude of different document types, from diaries and letters to newspapers, films and shipping logs, and they cover an extensive range of subjects and disciplines across the humanities and social sciences, and the history of medicine and the history of colonialism as well. So let me just kind of show you how that works, which might show you better how much is included in that. So this is the AM Explorer landing page. And you can start your search over here and start searching the primary sources with a basic search word. But you can also look at the collections over here. So under the collections tab, you basically see all of the collections that are included in AM Explorer. So anything from apartheid South Africa, early modern England, literary manuscripts Berg, 19th century literary society, Shakespeare's Globe Archive. So you can see some of the range of collections, and you're able to cross-search across all of them using AM Explorer, and it can be really useful. Sometimes the title of a collection is a really good indication of which collection you need to do your research in. So I could just enter popular culture in Britain and America directly from here, for example, and just enter that collection, or race relations in America. And just go directly within that collection. But if I'm interested in a topic that might come across in a number of different collections, and that might not be immediately evident from the title of the collection, it's really useful to be able to cross search as well. So I'm just going to try the word kitchen. So now it's cross-searching all of the collections that we just looked at for that word. And it's ordering them by relevance, so kind of number of word hits that appear in the document and whether kitchen appears in the metadata, which kind of determines how high up the results come. So you can see that there's some information on housing in the UK from the Second World War, where kitchens appear. There's a walk through the Levine apartments from the Tenement Museum in New York, showing the kitchens of migrants arriving to New York from Europe. There's a Dove Cottage kitchen where Wordsworth used to live and where he wrote some of his poems. So a kind of real range of material from different collections. And then on the right hand side, you can see the number of search results that appear in each collection. So you can see that leisure travel and mass culture has 718 search hits, which is a lot higher than foreign office files for the Middle East. So that allows you to kind of have a look at which collections might be really relevant for your research. There's also a frequency tab here, so you can see the different dates when search, both the number of document hits and number of word hits are really high. So there's a kind of peak in 1917, another one in 1938, and another one in 1945. So interestingly, there's some kind of overlap with the world wars for discussions of kitchens in primary sources. And I can also reorder here if I was interested in older results or newer results. I could click on the date over here. And you can see that the oldest document we have available here is some early modern accounting books in early modern England, which are part of the Shrewsbury papers. Just going to let it load. And if I click on the date again, it will give me the newest ones at the top. And that really gives you a sense of the date range of primary sources in Adam Matthew collections as well. First, there's some primary sources that haven't got a date in them. Let me just scroll down. But the newest one we have is an oral history from 2017. So this is the oldest document that we have that mentions kitchens. And then we have another example here from American World War II So this is an oral history from 2017 with Edward Hall, who was in Pearl Harbor when it was attacked in during the Second World War, and he mentions here, we can play a little clip of where that search result appears.
Now, this may sound funny to somebody, but I had no place to go. And I thought, well, if all this bombing is going on and all this debris is flying, I could get hurt. So I dived under the kitchen sink. And I stayed there until things kind of quieted down a little bit. And then I got up and out from under the sink and I yelled for Alex. Well, I didn't see Alex for 2 weeks. He disappeared.
So you can see the kind of range here of the types of primary sources that you can get when you're searching through AM Explorer. So if you use a keyword like kitchen, you can get accounting books from early modern England, and then memories of Pearl Harbor that have been recorded in the 2010s. So a huge range of primary sources that AM Explorer, the cross-searching functionality, allows you to discover. And I'm just going to now jump back into the PowerPoint. So I wanted to talk about two different collections that are kind of new to you in a little bit more detail. So I wanted to look at one collection that's a thematic collection that comes with material from several different archives. And then I wanted to look at a collection that's a single archive collection to show the two different types of databases that we tend to put together. So we build our databases around a single archive, and that's the kind of center of the idea for shaping that project, or we work with a number of different archives and collections to make a certain theme of primary sources available to students and researchers. And Sex and Sexuality is an example of a multi-archive collection. So it covers a really broad range of topics and is drawn from leading archives around the world. The module 1 was solely sourced from the amazing Kinsey Institute Library and Special Collections, which made available sources from the tenures of the first 3 directors of the Institute, so Alfred Kinsey, Paul Gebhard, and Dr. June Reinisch. And then module 2 was sourced from 7 different archives in the US, UK, and Australia, and really explored LGBTIQ+ personal history, self-expression, and community activism. And one of my favorite parts of this collections is the amount of personal stories in the database, and they really range from Georgian Britain, diaries of lesbian experiences from the 1800s right up to the present day US, about how people expressed and perceived their own sexuality and gender identity. And the examples I've picked for this slide, just to show you one kind of sub-collection within this database, are these hundreds of anonymous responses to the National Lesbian and Gay Survey, which was launched in 1986 by Kenneth Barrow to capture the personal thoughts, opinions, and lived experience of Britain's gay and lesbian community. And these little snippets here are from a directive responses from 1995 relating to people's coming out stories, and they show the kind of UK experiences around the same time in mid-1990s, but a real range of different experiences of coming out. Some individuals really planned it in a lot of detail, and there was a huge build up to them first coming out to their family. And then there's another example where someone does it kind of by accident, by getting too drunk at a wedding and kind of blurting it out. And that was his story. And there's also a range of levels of acceptance and kind of the aftermath of those coming out stories. Some some people's families are very accepting and start educating themselves and are very supportive, then there are kind of other experiences where it causes some friction in the family, and it's a kind of creates a much more difficult aftermath. And it's really interesting to kind of read those in the words of the people who lived through them. And because the materials come from many different archives, there's a range of material types included, from periodicals to pamphlets and films and erotic fiction. Some of the pictures that I've included on this slide include a 1986 informational film about the risks of HIV and AIDS, which comes from the British Film Institute. There's a 1944 letter here between a lesbian couple, Esther Herbert and Melville Doyle. They met during the World War II in Iowa and lived together in Southern California until Doyle's death in 2001. And their correspondence and photographs and the sub-collection of their life is kind of real insight into what it was like to live as a lesbian in post-war United States. And the photograph here is of Lynn Edward Harris, who was born in California in 1950. He was registered at birth as a female, and he was born as what would now be termed as intersex. He called himself hermaphrodite, but I think the term is today intersex, and he transitioned to be male in the 1980s and successfully legally changed his sex from female to male, and his experiences and life is also mapped out through one of the sub-collections in this database. And because this is a multi-archive collection, we've also split the database into different themes to help students find primary sources that are the most relevant to them, anything from gender identities to sexual health, and global and regional perspectives as well. Most of the archives are all in US, UK and Australia, but there's a lot of kind of, particularly in the Kinsey Institute archives, material that comes from other parts of the globe as well. And then just to kind of pick out one of the themes that might be a little bit more surprising, there's a huge amount of writing around erotic art and erotic literature. This is a kind of this particularly visually striking and also kind of literary magazine from 1962. And this is kind of one article that was included in an edition about about female hysteria relating to John F. Kennedy's campaigning, and kind of analyzing the erotic dimension of female sentiment towards political candidates. This particular issue also included quite suggestive photograph shoot of Marilyn Monroe, which was very close to her death, and their Bob Kennedy, who was then the US Attorney General, caused an obscenity trial against the magazine as a result of that. And as a result of that kind of obscenity trial, this magazine was shut down, and the editor of the magazine spent 8 months in prison. So this was one of the last issues that they managed to publish. Yeah. And then the kind of, before I hand over back over to Katie to talk a little bit more about Quartex, I wanted to look at a very different database, just to give you a kind of little snippet of the type of range and of material that's included in your Adam Matthew titles. So Colonial Caribbean is an example of a database that's built around a single archive. This database covers British colonies from Jamaica and the Bahamas to Trinidad and Tobago, through the 27 colonial office file classes from the National Archives in London. And the first module, which we published this month, covers the history of British colonies throughout the Caribbean, from the early settlement in the mid-17th century to the eve of the Slavery Abolition Act passed in 1833. And there's still 2 more modules to publish. So let me just jump into the collection to show it to you. So Alicia mentioned Quartex a little bit earlier. This is our third collection to publish on our new platform, Quartex, which Katie will speak to you about in a moment. In addition to all of the backlist titles that we've now started to migrate to this platform at no extra cost to the institutions who own those backlist titles. And CO Caribbean is also really excitingly the first Adam Matthew collection that has HTR transcription available to it. So you may know that we've had HTR in our manuscript heavy collections available before. So we've had handwritten text recognition available, but this is the first time there are underlying transcripts that are produced by that HTR as well, which allows you to now kind of do keyword searches across the entire site, and it will pick up both results within handwritten documents, printed documents, and in metadata. So let me just try show you how that works. So I could search for the word manumission, for example. And you can see all of the search results over here. And you could choose here to either just search within the metadata or the full text. And I'm just going to click on the Jamaica dispatches from 1826 to show you how those search results appear on the site. So you can see it's automatically jumped to the first page where the word manumission appears in the handwriting. You can also scroll down and see where most of the hits appear. So we have 5 hits on image 170. So I might want to click on that to see where those are. And let me just expand so you can see a little bit closer. So you can see the word manumission is picked up here in the handwriting. And it's picked it up 5 times on this page. So it makes this handwritten material a lot more discoverable and easier to access to undergraduate students as well. So anyone who may not have had as much experience studying cursive at school or hasn't had any paleography training, they have now this kind of way of accessing those documents and an entry point, which might help lower some of those kind of psychological barriers that people can feel when they're faced with handwritten documents for the first time. So when you get kind of your words highlighted, you can then, it's easier to start reading around it. And we've built a number of you can see the kind of how the site is organized over here. It's very similar to other Adam Matthew collections in the way that it's organized with introductory pages on the left-hand side with selection criteria, information about language and terminology, which is really important in a collection like Colonial Caribbean, and teaching tools, information about the library we worked with and the scholars who helped us shape this collection. You can view all of the documents listed over here, or you can browse them by series, by colony, by theme, or by the governor. And then we have additional research tools over here. I think the guide to the colonies is one that's very useful, as well as the essays and video interviews. We've also curated the visual material separately in a visual gallery. So I'm just going to show you the guide to the colonies as an example. And the searching guide over here is really useful if you want to read more about HTRT and how that works. But I know Katie's going to talk about that as well. So if I click on Barbados, for example, it gives you a little bit of information about Barbados and the context of these colonial documents, with hyperlinks that you can follow to discover relevant primary sources relating to that. And you can either browse documents relating to Barbados or search for all references to Barbados. So you can browse any documents that have Barbados in the metadata, or you can run word searches and all references to Barbados using handwritten text recognition transcription. So you can see that this doesn't include just documents from Barbados. It includes now, because we're searching for references of Barbados, it includes actually a lot of material from other colonies as well. So I could click on this one from Dominica, for example. And it's picked up the word Barbados over here. And if you're ever introducing this to students, I really enjoy the video interview as well. I think this is the last thing I'll show you, and then I'll hand over to Katie afterwards. But we're kind of within our collections, we're increasingly using a mix of academic essays that you can read or download as a PDF that are hyperlinked back into the primary sources, but also video essays and video interviews to kind of help with students who have different learning methods and who find different formats, easier ways of absorbing information. And this is with Dr. Kirsty Warren, who talks about how to uncover hidden narratives within colonial documents, which is a very kind of useful starting point for students who are new to using colonial archives in their research and the implications of that, those dominating perspectives in those documents.
The Colonial Archives thus not only contains information about the violence of colonialism and slavery, but are themselves part of the process. Largely, they determine what we can know about Indigenous people, the enslaved, indentured, and their immediate descendants. That this knowledge comes through recordings made by their oppressors means we must question the ways that Indigenous people, the enslaved, indentured, and their descendants are represented. This is especially the case because when such people do appear in the records, it is most often for contravening the colonial order or because of some injustice done to them.
Cool. So that was, I'm happy to, this was a very kind of whistle-stop tour of these two collections, and I'm really happy to go back over anything over the kind of question time at the end. But I also wanted to give Katie a chance to talk about Quartex, so I'm just going to stop sharing my screen and let her jump over here and take over.
Thanks, Laura. I'll go ahead and start sharing my screen. Can you confirm if you're able to see the McGill University site?
Yes.
Yep. Perfect. Yep. Thank you. I'm glad that Laura ended on Colonial Caribbean. This is the first collection that Adam Matthew has been applying our enhanced HTR technology to. And, you know, actually, I should really acknowledge that Johns Hopkins was really helpful to us in getting this technology released. Actually, I worked with Margaret Bury, who shared some documents from Hopkins collections so that we could test the enhanced HTR functionality on them. And I'll show those to you in just a moment. But I thought I would start actually with another impact customer, McGill University, who is using Quartex in a project-based approach. And they actually just did a webinar with us last week to highlight their experimentation with HTRT functionality. And so that's what we're looking at right now. So I'd highlight that McGill is actually a repository that uses open source technology for the bulk of their digital collections. They're really using Quartex because they had a strong interest in our HTR capabilities and just sort of what that can offer in terms of creating new and interesting access points into some of their signature manuscript collections. So I'll highlight here, this is their homepage, and right now they've published 2 collections to their Quartex site. The first is Doncaster, but the one that they recently worked on and was the focus of our webinar was this fur trade collection. So this is their homepage. You can enter into the fur trade collection here. You can begin searching here. And they also have a bit of a description and more information here as well, down at the bottom of the page. They also have, again, the navigation at the top. So from the top, we can go to a page that describes the fur trade collection, allows you to search specifically just within the materials in this collection. And below that is a filtered list of assets, all associated with this specific collection. I'll also just quickly highlight that they also set up a digital exhibit to create sort of additional context and content for this specific collection. And I think they've done a really beautiful job of using our exhibit functionality. You can see here how they've laid out some of these pages in their exhibit. And I'll just also highlight this one. They've actually pulled in a mapping feature that relates to some of the assets in their collection as well. So this is a really nice feature that they're using. And then finally, they've also, just as Laura was showing us in the Colonial Caribbean collection, sort of how you can use controlled vocabularies in Quartex to create new and interesting entry points into the collection. I would highlight here that they've actually set up an entry page where we're using some names of the actual collectors or specific institutions that the materials are attributed to, so that people can pinpoint sort of what might be of interest to them. So in McGill's collections, obviously they have all handwritten materials, and they have transcribed those documents using our in-platform HTR technology. Apologies, I'm not sure why. I guess I didn't hit return. Let me go back to the home page and I'll try applying my search there. I'm going to search for the term Captain Jordan. Maybe just, here we go. And we'll come to a filtered list of assets where that specific search term was found. I'm actually going to toggle off the full text search. So if we only were to search the metadata for this specific person, you see we would actually not have found any results. So the reason we're being pointed to this specific asset is because of the transcript, which is automatically indexed against the asset. So I'll go into this specific asset, and you can see we go right to the page where our search term is found. You can see Captain Jordan has been highlighted here in the asset. To the right of the summary metadata, we have a transcript tab, and you can see that we have Captain Jordan highlighted here as well. I picked this specific asset because I wanted to talk a little bit about accuracy with HTR transcription. This is an example of a document that is really ideal for transcription in Quartex. So you can see it's pretty clean. There is some bleed through from print on the back of this page, but for the most part, we did some manual accuracy tricks with McGill in order to for our webinar. And so this is an example of a document that really has fantastic accuracy rates. So this is actually in the 90% range for accuracy on this specific document. So, and you can do other searches once you're in this specific asset. So I'll just search for the term Montreal. And you can see we have Montreal highlighted here and here as well. So this is an example of a document that's performed quite well. I'm going to jump over into, this is the My Account feature on Quartex, where visitors to your site can actually save assets that are important to their research. You can see this is actually, it spans all Quartex sites. So I have content from the Mass Observation Project. This is an Adam Matthew published database, but you can see I actually have assets from lots of different repositories who are using Quartex here in my saved documents as well. And so I wanted to show another example. So I've saved this asset here. You can see this document has some damage, some water damage down in the lower left-hand corner. But again, this is an example of another fairly nice document in terms of the script is very clear, the quality of the image, you know, minus maybe the watermarking on the bottom of the page, makes it still a really great candidate for this particular transcription service. So you can see we've been able to find our date, and we can also, again, we know that most people are probably going to be searching proper nouns in these types of documents. So I'll search for the term Charlotte Church, and we should find Charlotte mentioned here in our asset as well, and again in the transcript. I'll also highlight we do have, as administrators, you can actually allow researchers to down copies of the transcript and any other aspects of this asset that you might wish to. So, and it comes out as a plain text version. So researchers can actually take this and use this for a variety of purposes. We'd love to see researchers using this actually for digital humanities projects, maybe dumping this into Mallet or some other digital humanities tools to create new understandings of this type of content. I should also highlight actually that HTR technology works on most European languages. So this is actually an example of a French document. You can see it's actually both print and handwriting. And there's some unique instances here where you can see they've crossed out or written over top of some of the print content. HTR does work on documents that have mixed writing types, as we see here. And I can actually show that I'll just search for the term province because I think it is an example, yes, where it's actually been crossed out, but it does still pick it up. So, you know, again, it's not translating this document, but it is providing a copy of the document in its native language, which was French in this example. I should highlight that there are some types of materials which the HTR technology won't have as high an accuracy rating. So this is actually, you can see the writing here is a bit faint. And it, you know, is written in more of a tabular format. And the technology, while it does transcribe what is written here, it does not reflect the order in which it's necessarily written. So this is an example where, you know, this type of a transcript perhaps might be a bit confusing for a researcher to access and use. But again, it is still picking up terms. Oops, I think I spelled anniversary wrong. Apologies. It is still, I believe, picking up terms, which you can see here, even though the quality of this document is not as strong as earlier examples. So for this particular asset, we're looking at around a 79% character accuracy rating. And then finally, I thought I'd just highlight, because I feel like everybody has these types of materials in their collections, but documents that would be really hard for transcription. So again, this is actually, you know, a document where there's a lot of overwriting, writing on multiple axes, and, you know, it's just a bit of a more challenging document. And you can see here, I'll click over to the transcript, that it struggled a bit with this type of an asset. But what I will say is, and I'm happy to share this link with you, McGill has found that, this has been a really interesting experience for them using this technology through applying this technology to their fur trade collection. They're now selecting other collections to use this technology on. And one that I know is a strong contender is actually the natural history collections. Again, the metadata that we might be able to provide for those types of materials, do provide a high level of access, but because we don't fully understand how researchers might be wanting to use or search some of these materials, by having transcripts available, it's kind of creating the opportunity for their researchers to really dive into these materials and bring them to life. I think I saw a question. Yeah,
I was going to just say, Heather had a question of are the transcripts editable?
They are editable, Heather. So from the administrative side of the platform, it's a really easy process for editing the transcripts and then republishing them. So that is absolutely an option. And earlier when I showed that from the front end, a researcher can actually download a plain text copy of the transcript, we can see that, maybe you would have a project with a course where you ask the students to maybe correct that plain text version and then submit to the administrator for sort of considering those corrections for application on the back end. So it's absolutely possible. And as in this example, I think it makes sense that people would do that for certain types of assets.
Katie, one other question from Liz.
Sure.
Does editing the transcript help with the software to do better in the future?
That's a great question. So it is not training it on the fly. The technology is actually trained outside of Quartex, and we're always looking for partners who want to help us train the technology. So I'll just illustrate that we actually worked with the Folger Shakespeare Library to train this technology to read secretary hand, which is a form of writing that uses a lot of abbreviations and writing that is not as common today. So they had, I think, a corpus of about 100 documents, and then the actual transcripts for those documents as well. So we used that to feed in and train the AI to be able to recognize that style of writing. So as I said, we're always looking for partners to help us with that. And I'll just illustrate that. I'll come over to this page here. This is a dummy site, so ignore that it says the Gilded Age and Progressive Era. This is actually not that. You can see here all of the partners who allowed us to test this technology on some of their handwritten collections. And Hopkins is featured here. I have shared this link with Margaret, and I would invite you to connect with her, or I'm happy to send it to the folks on the call today to take a look at some of the samples that we ran for you all. And absolutely, this is technology that if Johns Hopkins was interested in applying this in a project-based way, sort of how McGill is, we'd be really happy to work with you on that and to talk with you about that. And again, as Alicia said at the beginning, as an impact customer, there is special pricing available for you to be able to do that.
One other thing I wanted to mention is Katie showing this, Joshua, that I thought might be of interest to you. This is the same technology that is running behind the Colonial Caribbean collection. And so while the Colonial Caribbean collection doesn't show you the actual transcript side by side, you can get, through Laura, you can get copies of all of the transcripts, all of those raw transcripts that are running behind the collection. So if you did want to use those transcripts for other projects, you would be able to do so. So I just wanted to mention that, Joshua, and I think we are retroactively going to go back and add it into older collections as well that would benefit from the technology, but that will be done over a period of time. So just wanted to mention that. And again, that's at no cost to any of the libraries that own these collections.
I'll go ahead and stop sharing here, but as I said, please connect with Margaret if you'd like to see some of the Hopkins samples, or I'm happy to send you the link. This isn't a publicly available site, so we ask that you don't kind of share it publicly because this was just for initial testing purposes. But if you're curious about this technology on your own materials, we'd love for you to take a look.
I love that demo, Katie. I was geeking out a little bit just seeing all those examples.
Oh, good.
There was a question from Joshua. Thanks, Alicia, for answering that about the chronological modules of Colonial Caribbean. I just wanted to kind of add that if you have a student who's working on the independence movements in the Caribbean, you have access to slavery abolition and social justice as well, and you have access to colonial America, and those also include documents relating to that period of history in the Caribbean. So if you have a student working on that, I'd also point them towards those two collections.
So when are the other collections for the Caribbean coming out?
That's a great question. They are slated for publication in 2022 and in 2023 is when they're currently slated for. So over the next 2 years.
Okay. Keep that in mind, Josh.
Yeah.
I hope the student will be around.
Yeah.
I do have a couple of questions that are totally backtracking. I hate interrupting the flow of a meeting, but if I can backtrack a little bit, you mentioned that we will be having access to data mining services. Is that on an Adam Matthew platform, or is that data that is downloadable to be then mined through a third-party platform?
So there's a really simple data request form available on our website where you can just fill in details and then we send over the raw data to you. So we don't have our own platform that we run for data mining projects, but we can send, we try and kind of send the data in a very as easily and with as little difficulty as possible over to you, so you can use that in your projects. The kind of feedback that we got from scholars was that part of their digital humanities work is already around they want to create their own platforms and methodologies to use that data, so they weren't really interested in us developing up our own platform for that because they just wanted the data to play with.
And having to learn a new platform for all the different resources is tricky. So that's actually really good to hear.
Yes, and there's no extra cost to that unless you request it on the hard drive. Then we just ask for the cost of the hard drive to be covered. But if you want it transferred via FTP, it's completely free, and we try and turn that over as quickly as possible. That's
really good to hear. Let's see. Sorry, I'm looking at my notes because I had other questions. So as far as Adam Matthew Explorer, AM Explorer, is that like a one-stop interface to search all of the different collections?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's I think the only exception is Research Source because it is a separate kind of suite of materials from our digital publications, but you can cross-search within Research Source itself is a cross-searchable platform, so you could use those side by side, but apart from that, AM Explorer searches through everything that we've published over the last 20 years of our kind of publishing history.
Awesome. I love easy things, and that makes it easy. And you mentioned the guides that you had created for the audiovisual resources and for the course-specific thing. If we have faculty that's interested in that, Laura, do we reach out to you for that?
Yeah,
Okay.
Get in touch with me.
Awesome.
Yeah. I should also mention, Laura, and I didn't include it in our conversation today, but we can send it as a follow-up, is Laura and her colleagues on the outreach team have developed this really nice resource guide that kind of tells what time period collections cover and also kind of regions of the world and different document formats. So It's available. We did it for the ACERL collection, the collections that everyone gained access to through ACERL. And Laura, did we do a full impact customer one? I can't recall off of the top of my head, but I can at least send you the ACERL one. So you have that also, as you know, it's completely meant to help you guys, and you're welcome to tear it apart, use it however you would like to, but we can send that over for you as well.
Yeah,
Thank
we've
you.
done the ACEL one that covers all of the collections up to the end of 2016. We're working on creating one for impact customers that covers all of your collections. It's not quite complete yet, but yeah, we kind of created that out of feedback from customers that would help with their LibGuide creation, but it's quite a new thing that we've created. So we're kind of happy to share that and also get feedback to hear from you if there's anything we can do to improve that for librarians.
Awesome. All right, those are all the questions I had.
Okay, Heather, any other questions we can answer for you? I know we're kind of right up at the end of our hour here, but I'm happy to answer any question you might have.
No, I mean, I've already had a postdoc and a grad student using both of our new collections, the Kinsey collection and the Colonial Caribbean, which was very anxiously awaited. So like to the day, it was like, is it posted? Is the link available? So I've touched base with her during this meeting to see how that's going using that, but to see if she might want to have like a one-on-one demo with you as well to really dig in to some of the features. But other than that, no, I'm really excited about this Quartex to see if it's a potential for some of our other projects. So yes, this was very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, if you have any students or faculty members who are interested in our collections and would like a one-on-one conversation or demo as an impact customer, you're kind of entitled to that. And I'm always just kind of send me an email and I'm happy to kind of set something up at a time that works for you or your students.
I really appreciate that. I know that that's something that Adam Matthew has done in the past, and it's been very beneficial. I personally went through the AM Explorer, and that was very useful for me, and it's made me better able to demonstrate that for undergraduate researchers in particular.
Great. All right, well, I think that covers everything today. And like I said, we'll send you a copy of the impact document, that resource guide for the ACERL titles that you gain, that you own, and then the recording of today's presentation. So probably that will come from Laura. But again, if anybody has any questions afterwards, just let us know.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
Thanks.
Have a wonderful day. Good luck with your
Take care,
puppy.
everybody.
Thank you. I'm going to need it.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.